Thursday evening, I'm Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls. We have quite a bit to talk about again tonight, but it's really the same topics that we've been covering for the last couple of days. One being wildfire smoke. A lot of us are still dealing with it. And then also in the eastern Pacific, not only are we now free of Hurricane Barbara and Tropical Storm Cosme, but we're already watching two new areas that could likely become tropical storms by the end of this week, if not into the early portion of next week. So we're going to touch on the tropics. And for those of you with interests in Southern California, we are still watching the ranch fire very closely, which has slowly grown in size, but it's starting to be at least a little bit more contained. So first, let's start off with air quality. This map looks awfully similar to what we've been experiencing for the last couple of days. A lot of that Canadian wildfire smoke is really impacting the upper Midwest through the Great Lakes region and then out toward the north and the east. And most areas are highlighted here in that yellow shading, which means that we have moderate air quality. But where you see the oranges, the reds showing up, that's where we have air quality that's a little worse, especially for the sensitive groups, for people with asthma, COPD, lung or heart disease. Take a look at places like North Dakota. So just across the Canadian border, that's where we have several wildfires going on. So of course in North Dakota, with that northwesterly wind flow, that's been bringing in some of that smoke, and we have unhealthy air quality for all individuals across the far northwestern extent of North Dakota. But then that sensitive group that you see, that means that it's unhealthy for sensitive groups. So all orange shading you can see through North Dakota and then stretching through southern Minnesota over into Wisconsin. And here at home, we've actually had some slight improvements over the last few hours. So we spent the majority of the day with at least half of the Chicagoland area being in that orange shading, which again is unhealthy for sensitive groups. Now, almost the entire area is considered to be in the moderate category, which means it's acceptable for most individuals to be out and about, and you're likely not going to feel any of those respiratory impacts. But unfortunately, for those of you that would just love to see a nice clear blue sky, we don't have that in the forecast anytime soon. So that wildfire smoke is still going to linger around tonight, tomorrow, likely into this upcoming weekend, but hopefully we can see a little bit of a change in the weather pattern going into next week. It's really going to be something to watch. So futurecast smoke here. What you want to focus on this particular map is the orange or the red shadings that you're going to see popping up. So over the Chicagoland area, you'll notice that we have the yellows showing up. That means that we have slightly denser smoke overhead. And fortunately today, a lot of that really wasn't able to work its way down to the surface. So it's been suspended well into the air, which again, that's a good thing for air quality. But watch what happens going through tonight and then into our day tomorrow. We're likely still going to have fairly dense smoke overhead tonight through the early portion of tomorrow. And then the majority of Chicagoland, I think that smoke may actually be thinning out just a little bit. But let's zoom this in to locations closer to the lakefront, possibly out over the lake. You see those brighter yellows showing up? So that's suggesting denser smoke could still be in place around midday into the afternoon hours of tomorrow, right along the lakefront, and then likely out over the lake as well. So for those of you that are in this region, just kind of keep it in mind that it's just going to be more of the same going into your day tomorrow as well. Let's jump down to the tropics now. So we have a couple different areas that we're going to be watching for, all of which are all in the eastern Pacific. So we have yet to see any sort of development or potential development in any locations across the Atlantic, but the eastern Pacific, it has been very, very busy over the last 2 weeks or so. So don't forget, we started off about two and a half weeks ago with Tropical Storm Alvin. Then we had Category 1 Hurricane Barbara that recently died out earlier this week. And then shortly on the heels of that one, we had Tropical Storm Cosme. That too has fizzled out. But now the one that you see spinning on your screen here, just southwest of Mexico, this is called Potential Tropical Cyclone 4E. I know that's a weird name, but before you have an official tropical storm, which begins at sustained winds of 39 miles per hour, then you're labeled with typically a number rather than a name. So we have Potential Tropical Cyclone 4E. This will likely become Tropical Storm Delilah late this week. So it's forecast to become a tropical storm by Friday, by the end of the day tomorrow, and that's going to result in those winds likely increasing a little bit. So it's moving into a very favorable environment. And with this particular storm, it's likely going to be paralleling the southwestern coast of Mexico. So as of now, this, even after it becomes Tropical Storm Delilah, it's not expected to make landfall, but it could be bringing as much as 2 to 4 inches of rain, possibly locally up to 6 inches of rain, which could potentially even lead to things like flooding, mudslides in portions of Mexico. So again, we are going to be watching this closely over the next couple of days, forecast to become a tropical storm by the end of the day tomorrow. And then sliding just a little ways to the southwest, this entire region that you see here highlighted in yellow, this is an additional area that's being watched very closely because there's a 30% chance of cyclone formation sometime either late this weekend or early next week. So the water temperatures in this region are in the 80s. That's what you need. And you also need weak wind shear, and that's what we have. So this environment is very favorable for tropical development. That's why we're seeing so many organized systems coming together in the eastern Pacific. But again, when it comes to the Atlantic, things are still very calm and quiet, which is not unusual for June, but the Atlantic really starts to pick up, especially late July into August and September. That's typically when you really start to see storm after storm developing coming off of the coast of Africa. So zooming things up now to Southern California. We touched on this a little bit yesterday. The ranch fire, it broke out around 2:30 p.m. on Tuesday, and within just a few hours, it went from nothing to 4,000 acres that had been burned by the end of the day on Tuesday. And then yesterday, about 24 hours ago when we were doing this update, it was about 4,200 acres that were burned. Now it's up to 4,293 acres, so 4,293 acres. But the difference is, yesterday at this time, this fire was only 10% contained. Now it's up to 40% contained. So really moving in the right direction, but regardless, a very large wildfire ongoing in Southern California. This is near Apple Valley, which is just east of Hesperia. And this area, it's actually been dealing with drought conditions for quite some time, and it's still listed to be in a severe drought. So zooming things out, this drought monitor comes out every Thursday morning. And of course, today is Thursday, so this is the new data that you're looking at, now incorporating all of the rain that we've seen across the country over the last week or so. But you'll notice that we still have all of the reds showing up across the southwestern border. So places like Vegas, Southern California, through Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, all the way over toward Austin. All of those reds that you're seeing showing up, that's representing either extreme or exceptional drought. And unfortunately, this time of the year, that's just going to keep on going. We're really not going to see a ton of improvement in this region likely anytime soon. Zooming things in now. Here locally, for those of you across the far southern sections of Chicagoland, so places like LaSalle County, Kendall County, Grundy County, you were already considered to be abnormally dry in this yellow shading here. So the southwestern sections of the viewing area is what I'm talking about right here. We haven't really seen any changes, but over in Kankakee County, Northwest Indiana, that's where we're seeing some of the changes. So where you see that yellow shading now moving into portions of southern Lake County, southern Porter County, northern Newton and Jasper counties, that's taking into account all of those storms that were rolling through last week and earlier this week where we had some of those heavier downpours. So it did make a dent in the drought monitor, but a lot of us are still highlighted in that moderate drought. So we could still use quite a bit of rain across the region, and we do have some rain in the forecast. But take a look at this map here. This is future precipitation now all the way through Monday. And you'll notice there's really not a lot in the forecast. So we're going to see scattered activity rolling through possibly tomorrow, especially over the southern half of the viewing area. Same exact thing on Saturday, but in the far southern sections of the viewing area, places like Kankakee County, Newton, Jasper counties, you could be seeing some showers on Saturday, but otherwise it is going to be extremely scattered in nature that most of us are going to be mainly dry through this weekend and likely into early next week as well. Now, after Monday of next week, that's when we start to see a little bit of a pattern change. So it looks like we could be a little stormier Tuesday, definitely Wednesday night. We're kind of already eyeing up Wednesday of next week that could potentially bring a severe weather threat to the area because there's going to be a frontal boundary moving through, and the timing that it could be coming through could be favorable for strong to severe thunderstorms. So for those of you hoping for rain, we're going to see a better chance of at least a more widespread event moving through next week. But the next couple of days around here, you can see it's just going to be very scattered in nature on Friday, Saturday. By Sunday, by the way, Sunday is Father's Day, of course. And originally it was looking like we had at least an isolated shower or two in the forecast, but I did pull that chance from the forecast for Sunday. At this point, if you have any plans for Dad, I think things look just fine to be outside. In fact, the forecast really has improved. We've upped the temperatures into the low to mid 80s, so it's looking gorgeous on Sunday before those shower and thunderstorm chances are likely set to return going into Monday and Tuesday. Now, taking a check of the satellite and radar, Right now, we do have ongoing severe thunderstorms across portions of the plains, and this low pressure system, it's the same one that's going to still be impacting our region going into this upcoming weekend. So if we zoom things in, we have a warm front that's actually draped right across the region, and this is just going to be meandering back and forth the next couple of days. That's why we have scattered showers and thunderstorms in your forecast tomorrow, same thing into Saturday, because it's still going to be a focal point for some of that moisture to travel along. So that's where we're picking up the rain chances the next couple of days. Although this frontal boundary, it's also really going to be impacting your temperatures. I'll break that all down for you coming up right after this break. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back. We had a gorgeous day today. Temperatures ended up topping out in the upper 70s to low 80s across most of the area, but farther inland away from the lake, places like LaSalle, Morris, you topped out in the mid to upper 80s today. So you're going to see that warmth again tomorrow as well. But today at O'Hare, we topped out at 79 degrees, average is 80. So we had a very seasonable day at O'Hare. The record high temperature, 97 degrees, that was set back in 1956. So of course we didn't come close to that. The next couple of days around here, we're going to be in the lower 80s at O'Hare Friday and Saturday, but kind of the same deal. Farther inland away from the lake, very easily looking at mid 80s. And then we really start to see temperatures rising going into early next week. So on Sunday, if you've been following along throughout the week, you've probably noticed that this weekend's forecast, it's changed a ton. And the reason for that is because of that frontal boundary that I was just showing you. Based on the exact placement of that boundary on these days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that's going to be determining your high temperatures. So that's why you've seen those really large fluctuations from day to day. But at this point, we're really kind of honing in, and I think that we've got a really good idea that we're likely going to end up in the 80s. So Futurecast taking us through tonight and into early tomorrow morning. You'll notice that we still have this warm front draped across the area, but then rain chances begin to creep in from the south going into the afternoon, the evening hours. So for those of you near and south of I-80, there's a decent chance that you could be seeing a couple showers, maybe even a rumble of thunder tomorrow, but we are not expecting severe thunderstorms. And then going into your Saturday, same deal. We're going to have this low pressure system and this frontal boundary well south of the area, but it's still close enough to us that we could be seeing those scattered showers and thunderstorms. The good news, though, is for Father's Day, I think we're going to get a really nice break. We'll end up seeing a decent amount of sunshine. Tonight, we're in the 60s. We'll have north-northeasterly winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. And again, your weekend forecast looking pretty good. Next week, looking very, very summer-like. I'm going to tell you all about it coming up on the news at 9 p.m. We'll see you then.